If you're looking for the next Skyrim or Witcher, then this game definitely isn't that. Although it is one of the better RPGs I've played in recent years. If you're a fan of realism, challenge, and old school RPGs, then this game definitely is for you. In my opinion, Kingdom Come Deliverance is in a completely different vein of RPG than the Elder Scrolls or The Witcher. So if you're expecting another action-adventure, combat-oriented RPG, then you'll be sorely disappointed. The game is fantastic to say the least, and despite some of the glaring problems that this game has, I still enjoyed it immensely. There's just a certain charm that this game has that is nothing like any other game I've played before, and I feel like Warhorse did an incredibly commendable job with the first installment of this series. This video will contain major spoilers for the story of Kingdom Come Deliverance, so if you don't want spoilers, then I recommend waiting to watch this video. You have been warned. In today's video, we're going to be weighing up what I believe to be the pros and cons of Kingdom Come Deliverance and deciding whether or not it's the best RPG you'll probably never play. One of the main selling points of Kingdom Come Deliverance was that it would be an incredibly realistic recreation of 15th century Bohemia, and man did they deliver. The game world is absolutely gorgeous. It may not be the most grand region because there are no huge cities or castles, but there are accurate representations and recreations of towns and villages from 15th century Bohemia. That in itself is impressive enough. Not to mention that the game's graphics are beautiful, despite lots of pop-ins and rendering issues that we'll talk about later. I was completely astonished when I saw how in-depth this game went with its realism, not just in how the game world was designed so accurately to real life, but also the depth of the gameplay mechanics such as hunger, energy, and health. If you don't eat enough food, you lose energy, and therefore carry out tasks slower, such as swinging a sword. If you overeat food, you become sluggish, and then this results in being more heavy-handed and running slower. If you don't sleep in the game, your eyelids begin to droop, and it becomes difficult to do activities that require high amounts of energy to do, such as combat or archery. If you sustain enough injury, you will begin bleeding and will require bandages and a health potion to stop the bleeding and reach max health again. So it's safe to say that realism plays a huge part in this game's mechanics. One of my favourite features in this game has got to be the swordplay. Now, in larger battles with many enemies and many friendly NPCs, the fights look silly and can quickly get out of hand with everything that's going on. But the fights where it's one-on-one with a well-trained opponent is where the combat system truly shines. The sheer amount of combos, counters, parries, and methods of attack there are is somewhat overwhelming at first, but as you invest more time into the combat skill trees, you really start becoming familiar with all the various mechanics that make the combat in this game so enjoyable. What's more is that it's actually challenging too. I've been beaten almost instantly on many occasions because I simply wasn't prepared, and unlike other RPGs, I couldn't blame it on the enemy's level being higher than mine, because enemies aren't leveled. They're simply either good with a sword or not good with a sword. So theoretically, you could take on tough enemies right from the get-go, although it would prove difficult because you wouldn't have much skill with swords. You learn more as the game progresses. Not only is there in-depth combat, but something I really enjoyed was the social interaction with NPCs during various investigations or side quests. Speech does play an important part in the game, as it allows you to access extra information from characters that might not have been available had you not passed the speech checks. There are so many secondary skills in Kingdom Come Deliverance too, such as alchemy, stealth, horsemanship, and so many more. I tried to play as diversely as I possibly could, and I got skills in almost everything, but there is simply so much that I couldn't experience everything the game had to offer. It's that in depth. With a lot of games being simplified to shit over the last few years, it's amazing to see a game like Kingdom Come Deliverance that isn't scared to have such an in-depth and well thought out set of mechanics. It really is a breath of fresh air. The leveling in this game takes much inspiration from games like Oblivion, in which you got skill points and leveled up from doing things. You develop existing skills by doing them, opposed to getting completely new abilities out of nowhere simply because you got to the next level. Say if you want to become better at the sword combat in the game, you must first challenge opponents to fights, and if you come out on top time and time again, then your sword skill will go up. The same goes for every other melee weapon such as maces, axes, and so on. If you want to have better defense, you should focus more on blocking and parrying opponents' attacks during combat, and engaging in combat in general increases your overall warfare level, in which you can develop a variety of new skills. I really like the system that was adopted in this game. Instead of just having an overall level and spending skill points on certain abilities, you have to actually develop these abilities yourself by using them. It's a really small addition to the overall mechanics of the game, but it does make a huge difference. It means in order to get some form of progress, you must experience things first, much like in the real world. This just adds more to the game's already immense realism. The story of Kingdom Come Deliverance is very much a tale of someone finding their true place in the world. It shows how someone can go from a blacksmith's apprentice in a small village to becoming quite a vital part of a civil war. One thing I really like is how the game shows representations of poor life in the Middle Ages as well as living among nobility. The prologue to the game is all very normal. Your mother wakes you up, you proceed to carry out your daily chores and rituals, and everything seems all very mundane, although this was the intention of the game. Even this introductory section is so complex and has a range of ways you can complete it. One particular task in this section is where your father asks you to go get some items from an NPC in the village. The easiest way to complete this quest with no violence was to use speech to convince the character to hand over the items. However, I didn't pass the speech checks, so I had to do things slightly differently. By differently, I mean get into a fight with the guy, accidentally surrender halfway through, then strangle him and drag his body into the house before stealing the items from him. Definitely way more messy than I intended for the process to be, but it worked in the end, and I returned to my father with the items he requested. And this was only the first 30 minutes of loading the game up. When you've finished carrying out your chores, before you know it, your village is being attacked, and in the panic and chaos with men on horses cutting people down, your parents die in a harrowing scene. This not only gives Henry a driving force, but you as a player too. You got used to these characters and the relationships they have with Henry, and it was actually sad to see them slaughtered before your eyes with nothing you could do to stop it. After this section of the game, you get your first task, which is to notify a nearby town about the recent attack and that they could possibly be next. And then finally, to bury your parents. Burying your parents proves to be more difficult than it looked, because halfway through the task you're ambushed by bandits, attacked, robbed of your father's sword and left there to die. You wake up in a mill near a walled-off town called Ratai. You come into service of Sir Radzig Kobyla, and you are equipped with basic armor and weapons, and trained in basic combat, and let out into the open world. This is where the game truly starts. You can go anywhere in the open world, accept quests from anyone and wield any weapon. I for one went on many bandit hunts because the bandit leaders usually carry valuable items that can be sold for lots of money, as well as the fact that I could only get better at swordplay if I actually got into fights, so it was also to learn the combat and to generally become more experienced. I found myself on many adventures in Kingdom Come Deliverance. I fought skilled enemies, made lots of money, formed relationships with characters, explored underground mine shafts, became a master swordsman, and I even stole lots of things during my time playing the game, and I never once got bored. You find yourself becoming immensely immersed in Kingdom Come Deliverance, and that is one of the true beauties of this game. It isn't the nice looking world or the graphics, it's the experiences that you have and how you can get lost in this game entirely. Every side quest I did had an interesting premise and story to go with it, which just made the world feel all the more filled with life and content. Although your experience isn't hindered if you don't do side quests, there's plenty of interesting things in the main story. If you were thinking that because this game isn't fantasy that it won't have interesting things to do, then you were definitely wrong. I can't recommend this game enough. It is the story of a young man trying to find himself in a world where he is left with no one, and this game truly is an RPG experience that I think everyone can appreciate. Of course there are downsides to the game, some of these being in its poor optimization, loading times, pop-ins and texture issues. I also had some really bad crashes in my game that really hindered my experience, especially because the game features a saving system in which you can only save if you have a save your schnapps or by sleeping. In my save, I had a glitch that didn't even let me sleep, so I had to either use a save your schnapps or use the bathhouse every time I wanted to save. It's safe to say that I usually didn't have many chances to save my game because of the saving system and because of the particular problems I ran into in my playthrough. So when the game crashed, it would sometimes set me back by hours, which was just incredibly demotivating. It would usually just end with me switching the game off and doing something else, although I did always come back in the end. My main gripe with the console version of Kingdom Come Deliverance was the pop-ins and optimization. It kind of ruined the immersion sometimes when I would be riding my horse into a town and have every building be a brown mesh texture with no details, and to have people with only half a body walking around. Not to mention the awful frame rate I was getting when all of these assets were loading in. I feel as if Kingdom Come Deliverance could have maybe used some more time in development to polish it up and iron out the kinks, although it's such a large game that it would be hard to have it work perfectly, so I can excuse some of the problems that it has. Although it is a great game, something feels unpolished or unfinished, but I suppose that's what you'll get when your game begins as a Kickstarter project. They have done incredibly well with this game, and despite its flaws, I think it's still one of the best RPGs I've played in recent years. When I first saw this game in early 2014, I didn't think it would ever come out. It looked way too good to be true, a medieval RPG with the core of the game being realism. Here we are nearly 4 years later, the game was released and it actually turned out to be fantastic. If you're a fan of RPGs that challenge you or that have a steep learning curve, then I definitely recommend this game. This game is a true RPG, not these pseudo RPGs that have been coming out recently that have RPG aspects. You fully assume the role of Henry in this game, and you can make him into whatever character you want due to the decisions you make. Never have I played a game with such in-depth mechanics in which all of your actions have consequences. This game may have glaring problems, but it is definitely something special. Kingdom Come Deliverance is further proof that not every game needs AAA funding or development to be great and successful. Kingdom Come Deliverance doesn't tick all of the boxes. It may not be for everyone, but it just might be the best RPG you'll probably never play.